TikTok, time to rock. So you're not familiar with the new circulating claim that your hero, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, is a closet atheist?
Yeah, I don't really care about Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince, and I feel like they are illegitimately leading this country when I should be ruling it. So therefore, I'm not really very much up to date with what's going on over there. I haven't seen it, but yeah, now that you're saying it, I guess there's something happening over there.
And it's yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? You've got all these concerts, Iggy Azalea telling people to like singing about people worshiping her and stuff like that, and that's Saudi Arabia. And as soon as I posted what the topic was, Black Angel started sending me links to all these videos and such. But apparently they opened a bikini beach in Jeddah, so now there's a beach. Now there's a beach. You don't have to be in a burqa. You don't even have to be in a burkini. You can be in an actual bikini in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia.
The change in Saudi Arabia is just happening so fast, so rapidly, and which of course kind of confirms the idea that there is something very different about the ruling people right now and what's going on in their minds and what they care about. The crown prince very much took over all decision-making processes and all that, and it's pretty much leading the cultural changes in the country. But the thing is, I mean, just 10 years ago, it was there was still a mandatory hijab law. It has been abolished, has been lifted. Now there is still kind of a law which is like vaguely dressing modestly, but and maybe wearing an abaya, but it is not really, it is very loosely defined. But there is no longer a Sharia enforcement. Saudi Arabia was one of the two countries that had this massive Sharia regulation and obligation, along with Iran. They abolished it. But you would think, okay, abolishing Sharia, abolishing hijab is one thing, but along with that, then bikinis, allowing parties, then organizing a music festival and inviting the most
Alcohol now legalized in
yeah
certain places in
alcohol,
Saudi Arabia.
a music festival with the most sexually provocative musicians in the world
Yeah,
invited and
stuff,
singing
stuff, stuff. I
blasphemous
would, I
stuff.
would,
Like, what is happening?
stuff I would not want my kids watching, and now they're blasting it and people dancing to it in Saudi Arabia. There is the famous little interview that was posted on Memory where he's affirming the Quran, but he's saying he rejects most hadiths and so on, and apparently doesn't think that they should apply legally. Um, and seemed to think that if you're doing stuff in your own home, it's got nothing to do with this. And it sounded like he was saying that you need a clear command like from the Quran or certain kinds of hadith. So you got that.
There were always rumors and also news of whenever the crown prince travels internationally, goes to Western countries. You could already see him. Often he just takes off his whole thing and dresses like a regular person in the West. But there were also like rumors that he just engages in all kinds of activities, parties, and all kinds of pleasures whenever he's away from there.
Shocker.
Um, the thing is, Saudi Arabia wasn't always a restrictive Islamist country. Despite being the home, despite being in charge of the two sacred sides of Islam, um, until the 70s or so, it wasn't very restrictive. It was in the 70s that this thing happened. The Grand Mosque seizure happened, where with this religious organization in a terrorist attack, even, and like took control of the Kaaba and took control of the Grand Mosque in order to implement a certain religious demands. And after that event, I'm not entirely familiar with how it unfolded, but after that event, Saudi Arabia took an extremely sharp turn toward becoming incredibly religious and imposing all kinds of restrictions upon the population. That's where Saudi Arabia suddenly turned hard Islamist. And now it seems like under the current crown prince, things are turning into the opposite direction. And lots of people say this is happening because Saudi Arabia realizes, like everyone else, that Saudi Arabia was nothing. It was nothing. It was a poor, dumb desert until oil made them rich. But oil dependency will, in the future, run out, and it will no longer benefit them. And what will they be left with? Which is why they now have to find a different thing to channel toward. And what they're going for is westernization, opening up the country to tourism and things like that.
According to Surah 9, verse 28, Muhammad was declaring that the pagans could no longer take the pilgrimage to Mecca, and Muslims became worried. The new Muslims in Mecca became worried. This is gonna interfere with our trade with these people. It's going to interfere with our money in the city, because we don't have a lot going on in this city. It's kind of a desert crap hole. One of the things we got going through us is we got people coming in to take the pilgrimage here, and you're ruining that. And that's when Muhammad gives the solution in the very next verse. We're going to fight the Jews and Christians till they pay the jizya. So we're going to get paid that way. So you get paid with jizya. But the other way you get paid is if people convert. Then they're paying their zakat, and they're taking the pilgrimage to Mecca. So it's all, you're worried about losing one source of revenue. I'm giving you all these extra sources of revenue. Isn't it wonderful? 5 to 9% of Saudis are estimated to be atheist, and that will here's the comment here for you atheists who are celebrating. If the trajectory continues, that is correct, Mohammed Hijab. If the trajectory continues, what's this going to be like in another 5 or 10 years? But I'm not going to watch this because it's a video. We're not going to have time. But Saudi Arabia, an openly gay man won some sort of Best Actor award in Saudi Arabia. I mean, are you like? It's like how did the country change this rap? I mean, that's like unprecedented. I've never seen this much change in a 5-year period, right? So that's absolutely crazy, and so we'd have to wonder why. We have to wonder why things are changing so rapidly. And you're suggesting, well, just economically, they know their oil is going to run out. So what are they going to do?
Yeah.
But also,
obviously don't care that much enough about the religion. So.
Yeah, and so the other thing is, I mean, think about it. If you do have people like the Crown Prince who are actually closet atheists and are actually sabotaging Islam from within. But I mean, think about this, AP. In the Muslim world, they've been able to keep their people insulated from criticism for 14 centuries. And all of a sudden, you've got open access to them. And their leaders can no longer keep them insulated. But they still try, like Pakistan bans videos and things like that. Saudi Arabia, they arrest bloggers and so on for posting negative comments about Islam or the leaders or something. But I mean, if they're just like opening the floodgates all of a sudden, I think Islam is in a bit of trouble. I think Islam is in a bit of trouble.
It is a downfall, and I guess there was always talk about the whole revivalism of Islam that took place over the last half century or so, because a lot of the Muslim countries that are nowadays known to be very religious, they were actually very secular at the beginning of the 20th century and throughout. They were following very secular and nationalist ideas that were contrary to this, to Islamic unity and Islamic laws and all of that. And there was a revivalist movement where these Salafi groups and others started saying, we, the Muslim world, we have become terrible. We have become, pathetic. We have lost our faith. It is time to go back to the roots of our religion and so on. And this is how they slowly took over and turned these countries into more religious things. But it looks like, and the same thing happened in Saudi Arabia, as said, after in the 70s when the Grand Mosque seizure happened. But if it goes like this, if the trajectory continues as it is, and Saudi Arabia, along with other countries, after such a short revivalism period, again turns toward secularism and let's go off Islam, then this could mean that that whole Islamic revivalist period was just a hiccup or a last ditch effort by the Islamists or by Islam to stay relevant or stay in charge, and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously these countries realize that Islam doesn't work, it doesn't get them anywhere, and they're going a different way now.
They lost their empire when the Ottoman Empire fell, and all of a sudden they no longer have a caliphate anymore. This is like, I mean, to a Muslim, to your average Muslim back then, people can't even absorb how big this was for them, right? We've always had our caliphate, and now we've lost our caliphate. We don't have a caliph. What is going on here? This wasn't supposed to happen. It has collapsed. We've lost. We have been defeated. We lost our empire. And so the reaction was for these countries to say, all right, well, we lost, and the Western world is much more powerful, so we need to start copying Western nations. And so look at pictures from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran from 60, 70 years ago. They looked like Western nations. They all tried to modernize. But there's another possible reaction. There's another possible interpretation of the evidence. And the other possible interpretation of the situation is that you weren't being strict enough. You weren't being devout enough. You weren't applying Sharia faithfully. And that's why Allah is punishing you using these Western nations, or he's testing you or something along those lines. And you have the opportunity to really double down on Sharia, and then Allah will bless you. And so that's when you get, the Iranian Revolution, where the fanatical religious leaders take over. That's when you get the Muslim Brotherhood. Eventually you get groups like ISIS, but they all had the same mentality. The reason we are not dominating the world is because we are not being strict enough. We're not eliminating heresy and hypocrisy. If we just do those things and go full force on Sharia, then Allah is going to bless us. And well, notice, how's that working out for everyone? It's not working out. So the question is, if that failed, what then happens? And according to what AP was just saying, we might be seeing the collapse. We might be seeing them realizing, actually just going hardcore like Salafi, Muslim Brotherhood style Islam, it's not working. We need to go back to modernizing.
Ataturk takes over Turkey after the whole, secular revolution, when Western powers defeat the Ottoman Empire and basically scatter it and try to turn it into different countries and one little Turkish country. Ataturk fights against them with under his leadership, defeats them, is heavily against the Ottoman Empire, heavily against Islamic rule. He calls it he calls it an old, outdated, useless system and things like that. Expels the Ottomans from Turkey, and has the caliphate now in his hands. And he says, we don't want this. We don't need this. This is ridiculous. This makes us backward and stupid. But what he actually does, Ataturk, is reportedly he offers it to certain people. He says, no Turkish leader should hold this title. Let's give it to somebody else, to some Arabs who will not have any, who will not have any jurisdiction or any power over Turkey. He offers it to several leaders, and they say, no, I am not worthy. We stay loyal to the Ottoman Caliph. And in the end, what Ataturk does is like, well, okay, abolish it. Can't be reestablished again, because they're simply, it's impossible to, with this Islamic world, to create the unity and establish the caliphate.
Because they're all rallying around different leaders and different dawah guys and different sheikhs and so on, and you can't do it anymore. No idea whether we should trust him, but a sheikh is saying that he has inside information that the crown prince is actually hates Islam and is an undercover unbeliever. So let's go ahead and watch this, and then we'll watch Harris Sultan actually goes through it a bit more carefully and adds his own commentary. We'll check that out. But here we go.
أحد ضباط CIA اللي أصبح الآن عضو في الكونغرس تكلم قال قابلت محمد بن سلمان قبل.
Someone from the CIA stated that he met with MBS about 1.5 years ago.
سنة ونص تقريبا شخصيا بيني وبينه.
Personal meeting with him.
لي
he said something of critical importance.
هو يقول هو بنفسه يقول
He
قال
said
لي
that the problem does not lie with the
المشكلة ليست في
extremists,
المتطرفين والمشكلة ليست في الجماعات
nor with
الجهادية
the jihadi groups,
المشكلة في
AP,
الإسلام نفسه
but rather with Islam itself, AP.
وعلينا أن
So the Western
عليكم
government
أن
should work
تتعاونوا
together
معنا
with
أيها
us
الحكومات الغربية حتى نساعد في تغيير الإسلام نفسه.
so that we can reform Islam itself. So this guy's saying that he knows a CIA guy who's talking to the Saudi crown prince, and the Saudi crown prince was telling the CIA agent, we should work together, Western nations. The problem is not extremists. The problem is not the extremists. The problem is Islam itself. So we should all be working together to create a better future here.
Wow. I mean, if he really did say that, that's
And that's what I mean. It's like you'd think, okay, why should I listen to this guy? Why would I be listening to this guy? Any enemy that MBS has, any enemy he has could just go up and say, oh, he's actually a secret. He's working with the CIA. Like you could do it. But it makes perfect sense of everything the guy's doing since he's been in power. It makes perfect sense.
Thing is, on the one hand, I want to believe this because it sounds fantastic. It sounds very, very based, as they say in science. But the other thing is, of course, in the Arab world, there is an insane amount of conspiracy theories, and Middle Eastern people are in general not a very good source of information. You can find them say all kinds of ridiculous things. You can hear all kinds of ridiculous things like that. Israel actually installs cameras in birds which fly over and land in Muslim countries through which Israel spies on Muslims and things like that. All kinds of ridiculous things. So what I'm getting at is that in the Muslim world, you better don't believe something that some guy says, no matter who it is. But again, I would like to believe that it's true. No joke. It's like, of course, in the Muslim world, that's one thing to go for. As soon as you suspect that somebody is not going the way you want them to go, you're like, oh, he's a Jew. He's working for Israel.
Yeah.
And actually, with the Crown Prince, this is not something uncommon. You have many people might have seen since October 7. There were memes. There were pictures spread about the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, depicting him as a Jewish guy with a hat and those things, because Saudi Arabia has been normalizing relations with Israel. And
that's the other component, by the way.
Action. They didn't take strict action against Israel after October 7th. That's why they're like, "Does you see? The Crown Prince is actually a secret Jew. He's working for his own people."
But notice that would actually fit in pretty well with the rest of the trend, right? It's like if I see a nation like Saudi Arabia saying, "Hey, time to get along with the Jews," I'm like, "Wait, what? Have you read your books? No, we don't take those seriously." Wait, what?
A Jew.
Very interesting stuff going on here. All right, let's see where this guy goes with this. So, MBS made such a statement to that person.
فهو الرجل الآن يصرح لهذا الشخص ما لم يصرحه لغيره.
Which is something he has not said, which is that he finds Islam itself to be problematic.
Nice.
Finds Islam itself to be problematic. So, MBS has dedicated his life to change Islam. He, again, whether this guy knows what he's talking about or is making stuff up, the behavior that we're seeing definitely fits the idea that he does not take Islam very seriously. And that's kind of like that's putting it mildly. So he's either an unbeliever or he's just not taking it seriously. Something's going on. In order to strip Muslims of their religion.
يخلص المسلمين من الاعتداد بدينهم من الثقة بعقيدتهم من التمسك بهذا المنهج. وشايف حاله أقول لكم
This individual is not in his right mind. Oh.
ليس طبيعيا يعني رجل يعني اكتنفه جنون.
He's a megalomaniac and thinks he can achieve what?
فظن أنه سيفعل ما لم يفعله الأوائل.
Something. Oh, did you hear that? Something which those before him could not do. No one has ever contemplated changing Islam. What planet does this dude live on?
فكر أحد أبدا أن يغير الإسلام نفسه. بإمكانك أنت.
You can corrupt people's morals.
تفسد الناس.
That's true. Or oppress them.
أو
or imprison them,
تقمعهم أو تسجنهم أو تقتل
or kill the
العلماء
scholars,
أو
or banish
تطردهم.
them.
لكنك
However, it's not.
ليس من الواقع.
Is this guy joking? Like what?
They will cite the Quran verse and say, Allah says, Allah will complete his light, although the disbelievers dislike it. That's what Muslims actually believe. So they actually believe that nobody has ever tried, or people tried, but they've never achieved to even change a little bit of Islam, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's like, has this guy not been paying attention to the trajectory?
No. Apparently not.
Dude, you're living in the middle of it right now. I don't know what this guy's thinking. It's not realistic to change Islam itself. It's not doable, regardless of how hard you try, to change Islam itself, because the Quran says so. Past 1400 years, others before you have tried. Yeah.
فهذا الذي نقله يدل دلالتان. الدلالة الأولى
MBS is a criminal. He says first, MBS is a
criminal.
الدلالة
الأولى أن محمد بن سلمان مجرم يعادي الإسلام نفسه.
That harbors hostility towards Islam itself.
Yeah.
ليس ما يقال بالتطرف
Not the claims of extremism and fundamentalism.
وأنه قد حمل هذا الموضوع. قد حمل هذا الموضوع فعلا كرسالة وكمشروع وكقضية له يتبناها. والموضوع الثاني.
Again, notice how this fits. He's saying this guy actually hates Islam and he's making it his life project to destroy Islam from within. That fits perfectly with the observation. I can't say that's the reason. It could be other things. He could really believe in Islam and just say, you know, we got to modernize. We can't just someone's got to do it at some point. Could be something like that, but I don't know. It seems to fit better if he's just a guy who doesn't take Islam serious, and could be a combination. Could be a combination of the two. Like one, we need to modernize, and two, I don't really believe in Islam anyway.
The funny thing is the word that he just used to describe MBS, mujrim. It does mean criminal, but it's like it doesn't really like the word criminal in English doesn't quite cover the meaning of what that actually is. Like it's not like a criminal before the law. It is more like somebody who is, I don't know, somebody who's a sinner or criminal, an offender of some sort. I don't know. You can't even really translate it, but it has much harsher implications actually.
See, Arabic is such a perfect language.
Yeah. Yes.
Can't be translated. Actually, this is the end. Here's the end. Let's see. Proves that MBS is a foolish person. Wait, this is what I mean, right? This proves that he's a foolish person. Wait, it proves the opposite of that. How are you getting that? All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how trustworthy I think this guy is. AP, give me your answer, and then I'll flash how many, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think how reliable I think this guy is, what he's saying.
It's going to be very useless, but I would say 5.
I would say 3. Meaning, and by the way, I'm not saying his claim that MBS is a closet Muslim. That I think is probable. I think it's probable. Like I would give that I would estimate like a 6 or 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. How true I think it is. Whether he's someone who just doesn't take it very seriously, may believe it's true, but not taking it very seriously or something like that. I'd say you're like in the 9 to 10 ballpark. But I'm talking about this guy and his story. And the CIA guy told me, Moto Gear said, how long before Islamic fundamentalists take over Saudi Arabia through violence, just like their prophet did? That's the thing. And Harris points this out. I mean, he doesn't explain it exactly the way I would, but he points out that MBS is basically a dictator. You're not going to mess around with him, and that's why it doesn't even matter if people are going around calling him an atheist and stuff. You get out of line, he will kill you. He will lock you up or he will kill you. But it's similar to other leaders who you got? You got Assad. You got Saud over there. Pretty secular leader. He will crush you if you get out of line. That dude will crush you. And there are people who don't like that, right? The fundamentalists don't like that because they can't take over because they got a guy who will crush him. Iraq. You had a big one there. That guy did not care much about Islam. But all the jihadi types were terrified of him because if you got out of line, he would send tanks into your village and completely destroy you. So they were terrified of him. So it's not that that no one can stand up to the jihadis and the religious fundamentalists will take over and so on. It's Western style leaders do not do well in that situation. Western style leaders don't do it. You can have a brutal dictator who can keep all those guys in line. Yeah. Some people would be surprised with how much gay porn stashes we found in abandoned Al-Qaeda buildings and positions in Afghanistan.
I mean, there was a whole collection that Bin Laden himself possessed, right? It is actually
had a big porn collection. We've talked before that a few years ago when the study was done, Pakistan led the world in porn searches for like goat sex and camel sex and all this stuff. These are the guys who are lecturing us. Keep in mind, any Muslims who are watching and are listening to what's going on in Saudi Arabia are like, no, how is morality going to be preserved? Do you have any clue what's going on behind the scenes in these places? Like,
that's how it is, man. That's how it is. It's so funny because the whole Bin Laden thing that there was a porn collection found in his where he is, in his headquarters, is used by many Muslims nowadays as evidence that he was not really a Muslim, but that he was a foreign agent. Because they're like, he's supposed to be a religious leader, but he had a huge porn collection that they found there. What kind of religious leader would do that? Which is just ridiculous because that doesn't show that he was not a Muslim or not a Muslim leader. It just shows that that being a religious Muslim leader doesn't mean that you don't look at porn. On the contrary, it could mean the opposite.
Arya says, don't you think this is Muslim reform, AP? There are 2 billion Muslims. You can't have all of them believing in 7th century beliefs. Don't you think it's about time?
Well, of course, I've always said that slowly Islam is bound to change. And right now, I think with all the developments happening in the world, it's probably going to speed up more and more and exponentially be, you will see a faster decline of this religion, and by decline, I don't mean necessarily only that the numbers will decrease, but that the religion itself will change and weaken from the Islamic perspective, and get better from a more human perspective. That's what we are all looking for. Any corruption of Islam is, in my opinion, a good thing.
And yeah, as far as most of what lots of people would be concerned about as far as Islam's actually attempting to dominate the world and thinking they're actually going to successfully subjugate people and implement Sharia and all this stuff. If Islam can get past that, people wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. But in order to do that, it's like they have to lose, right? They have to lose this attempt at, like the Ali Dawah approach. People gonna convert because of our tolerance, and hey, we're gonna kill so many people and subjugate so many people, and this is gonna bring about the Islamic revival. They have to lose that one, and then realize, okay, we can't compete. We can't subjugate people. It's not going to happen, and then it would be a bit more of a manageable problem.
The thing is also, people don't realize what we have actually done. You and I and others who participated in some of the actions that are considered extremely disrespectful and insulting to Islam, like the drawing cartoons, making songs. But you and we did the whole Quran ripping things and projects like that. I feel like we ourselves are not even aware sometimes of the thing that we are doing by doing that, the change that we are creating by just doing that. We are causing a massive change in the Islamic sentiment in only a few years by defiantly ripping up the Quran, disrespecting the Quran whenever we are disrespected or something like that. The first time we did that, there was a massive outcry. People went nuts over it. I remember my video getting spammed and going viral and being attacked by, I don't know, Indonesian, Malaysian Muslims and things like that, getting all kinds of threats. Now nobody cares when we do it. Nobody cares.
No one notices.
It's not brought up. Nobody even notices, and that is the fantastic.
We've trained them. We've trained them. We've made them get used to it.
Yes,
You're right. It's all these things play a role, and people don't see it, but we're kind of systematic, right? And that we'll examine a dawah lie, something that is giving them this false confidence in Islam. We'll examine it, and it's just we understand. Okay, that has spread to over 1 billion people who take it seriously. It's going to be some work to get past that. And so we'll just be relentless and people are coming. So you can take something as an example. 20 years ago, there's this myth of perfect preservation. There's never been a single letter's difference between any two Quran manuscripts anywhere in the history of the Quran. It's completely false. I mean, insanely false, ridiculously false. But that's what was preached to Muslims. And so most Muslims aren't listening to us. So how do we actually undermine that? Well, we just got to be relentless, and people are coming at it in completely different directions. There's some of us are showing Muslim sources which talk about changes in the Quran and verses being eaten by a sheep and large passages coming up missing. Some people are going through the manuscripts and like Dan Brubaker and so on. He's putting manuscripts side by side, saying this is not that. This is different. These are different. So he's pointing those things out and so on. And then Hatun showing up to Speaker's Corner with 26 different Arabic Qurans. And she said, point to any two of these. I will show you differences between them. And then you get the attempt to rescue and salvage the view. And Mohammed Hijab gets Sheikh Yasser Qadi on there. Then you get the holes in the narrative interview. And it's like it all comes together and the claim collapses. Now you'll still occasionally see people online, but I used to hear that like 50 times a day. Now I hear it like once a month about the perfect preservation of the Quran. And it's someone who hasn't been paying attention. Same thing with the scientific miracles. They spent decades with these scientific miracles and having their people like go through the Quran and anything they can twist into a scientific miracle, put it out there because people are just eating it up. And Zakir Naik's going out there and putting it all over the world and convincing all these people there's scientific miracles. So what do? We're just got to be relentless and keep coming after it, keep coming after it, keep coming after it. And eventually, even Ali Dawah, okay, it's all absolute nonsense. And so it breaks, but that's the pattern. It's lie, they lie. And then we spend a couple decades dealing with it, and then it finally collapses. But notice it all eventually collapses. And the rate at which these things collapse seems to be accelerating because more and more people are like their confidence in the Dawah guys is being shaken simultaneously. Once you find out that Dawah guy lied to you about perfect preservation, and he lied to you about the scientific miracles in the Quran and so on, then the next thing he's saying, well, we become more believable because we're the ones telling them the truth all along. We were telling them the truth. Their Dawah guys were lying. And what seemed crazy for a while is the Dawah guys would finally admit that it was all a lie, in which actually shows that we were right. But people would go right back to the same Dawah guys and continue believing them. It's like insane, but it's clearly shaking their confidence. But anyway, guys, so yes, it's systematic. You know what's going on this year? We're going to crush the Quran on the crucifixion of Jesus. Watch it happen. It's all happening this year. And more recently, if you look at the past couple of years, they started defending child marriage. Why? 15 years ago, no, that's a lie. Islam doesn't teach that. Now they're all shouting it from the rooftops. Why? We forced them into defending it. We turned it into a main objection against Islam. And we didn't let them lie about it, and now they actually are forced into defending. We're like taking little pieces of Islam left and right? It's like, and we're taking another little piece of it, and we're taking another little piece of it, and then snatching another little piece of it, and then so yeah, this year, we're going to see how long it takes. We're going to crush what the Quran says about the crucifixion, or at least crush what Islam believes about what the Quran says. Then it's going to be getting them to acknowledge that the Quran affirms the Bible, then it's going to be the collapse of the claim that Muhammad is in the Bible. It's watch it happen. Here we go. Harris Sultan commenting on this video.
Hi guys, this is Harris Sultan. I just found this video that was published nearly 5 years ago.
Oh,
by
that's crazy. I didn't even notice that when because Black Angel sent me the link. I didn't know that was 5 years. That changes now it's more believable because he said it before you had all of this wave of rapid changes. He's saying, so this guy's saying over 5 years ago, he's saying, guys, this guy actually is trying to undermine Islam from within because he doesn't actually believe in it. And he's trying to destroy Islam from within. And then you got all those changes after the guy said, oh, that makes it more believable.
كلام خطير. هو بنفسه يقول قال لي المشكلة ليست في المتطرفين والمشكلة ليست في الجماعات الجهادية المشكلة في الإسلام نفسه.
Wow, this is exactly how an ex-Muslim's mind works. This is exactly what we say. It's not about these radical Muslims, these jihadis, these extremists. They're just the symptoms of a much bigger disease, which is this ideology that we all call Islam.
Actually, that does add, Harris is right, that does add a little bit of credibility to what the guy's saying. He's saying in other words, it doesn't sound like a caricature, like a Muslim mind, of a guy with a Muslim mind, his caricature of what a closet atheist would be saying. He's saying that behind the scenes, MBS is saying, guys, you in the West need to understand the problem is not with the extremists. The problem is actually with Islam itself. There are problems in Islam. But that's standard among ex-Muslims. Ex-Muslims say, and Harris is right, and you agree, and that's what I see from the ex-Muslims. They finally realize, wait a minute, it's not the problem with extremists. There is a problem within Islam itself.
It is Islam.
And so the guy saying that that's what the position is and not coming up with some like insane version of what MBS is saying behind the scenes. I don't know. Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'm going to go from a 3 on how reliable I think the guy in the video is, like a 3 to like a 4, maybe. Yeah, probably a 4 on how reliable he is. But keep in mind, as far as MBS being a closet ex-Muslim, I think that's like in the 7 to 8 range.
I stay on 5.
أنه يجد في المشكلة في الإسلام نفسه.
So not only the fact that he's an ex-Muslim atheist, but he also wants the West's support to help him reform Islam.
فرجل قد نذر نفسه.
Oh, that also makes sense. See, yeah, I'm thinking, why would he be saying this to these guys? It does kind of fit, right? Like, hey, if I'm a Muslim leader in a country and I don't actually believe in Islam, but I have the ability and the power to make some changes, it would be cool to be working with Western nations to make this happen. And you see him working with, like WWE and promoting concerts and things like that. But it also makes perfect sense that he'd be working with politicians and the CIA and everything else. And hey, we're gonna bring Saudi Arabia into the 21st century. We're gonna make it happen so fast, no one can stop it. Wow.
That's the only way. You can't achieve that by yourself. You have to.
And then he goes on to say that, oh, look, people have tried that before. It hasn't happened before. This guy is crazy. He's a fool. And it's never going to happen again. Well, there is a key difference that these people always overlook. And this hubris is fast becoming the cause of their downfall. As I've shown this Pew survey before, from 2017, mind you, there has been a net deficit of people leaving Islam than people converting to Islam.
I actually don't even hear that as much as I used to. It used to be Islam is the world's fastest growing religion. And they would always misrepresent it as it's the fastest growing religion because of conversions, when it's the fastest growing religion because of high Muslim birth rates, because of the impact that Islam has on women, focuses on turning them into baby making machines and marrying them off when they're super young and so on. And you could have 1, 2, 3, or 4 wives, and you could trade those wives out pretty regularly. So yeah, you can end up with guys who have 60 or 70 children. And what happens? Islam grows rapidly. So it wasn't conversions But we've noticed as the apostasy rate accelerates, it's like you're gonna reach a point where the high birth rates can no longer offset the number of people leaving the religion, and that's when it tips. And I haven't seen any super recent statistics, so I don't know exactly when that is, or possibly if it's already happened.
It reminds me of an interesting quote from Mariam Namazi, who said that social media is doing to Islam what printing press did to Christianity.
All right.
I was with you right up until that. Harris. You could have said other things about Christianity declining in certain areas, but the printing press. So 1436 AP. You heard it from Harris. 1436, Christianity collapsed because people started printing Bibles.
That is something that I expect Mariam Namazi to say, who I'm totally not a fan of. It's not good that Harris Sultan repeats it, but yeah, I have a similar internal reaction, and I knew immediately that they lost you here.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, there are areas where Christianity has declined and so on. Most of that is pretty recent and not in 1436. Christianity was pretty booming for a long, long time.
Maybe ask Mariam Namazi why the printing press happened.
Yeah, and when those darn Christians started printing stuff on their dang printing press, that was the end of Christianity. And now we're seeing the same thing in Islam, where as soon as social media started, Islam started collapsing, like within 2 decades.
Yeah. That's a myth. For those who still hold on to that is a myth. That it's the printing press didn't bring about the decline of Christianity or anything like that. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
And I say this as an atheist.
We still love you, Harris, but you got some work to do.
Inshallah.
Got some work to do.
Unfortunately, printing press could not damage Islam the way it damaged Christianity because
1436, the end of Christianity began.
Because, first of all, the Ottomans didn't even introduce the printing press for another 100 years or so because they said that Arabic is God's language and we can't cheapen it by printing it. And then secondly, literacy did not really flourish in the Muslim world. So people were not reading. So the primary understanding of Islam came from the so-called scholars of Islam. And as Yasir Qadhi said, that there are certain things that we keep to ourselves amongst our intellectual circles. Certain things.
It's really good how he ties this in. So he's talking about the past, that they didn't. The Muslim world was more reluctant to print books, and literacy didn't really spread. Which those two are tied together. If you're not printing books, then books are really much harder to come by if you don't have a printing press, because people have to copy them by hand. And so it's not, you don't end up with tons of bookshelves of people who have piles and piles of books around them. If everything is written by hand, you have to be very wealthy to even have a book. But he ties it in. He ties it into Sheikh Yasir Qadhi which is funny because we already brought it up a little bit as the sort of the beginning of the end for the claim of the perfect preservation of the Quran, when Yasir Qadhi was basically begging Mohammed Hijab, can you stop asking me these questions? This is not wise. This is not wise to be having this discussion. Ask me afterwards in private. You can't be doing this now. And Mohammed Hijab, let me ask a follow-up question. So what'd you say? And he just didn't get it. He didn't get it. And then Yasir Qadhi had to take down his video. Hijab had to take down his video. Yasir Qadhi then started having anyone blocked people who were posting clips from the video. He was citing copyright infringement, even though it's not, and he knew that. He knew he was falsely accusing people of copyright infringement and so on. But he was saying during that you don't explain this to the masses. This is something for scholars to try and figure out. You can't have this discussion in the public. You're going to be spreading doubts, which is exactly what it did once people found out about that. So yeah, Harris is pointing out Islam has always had this issue of the scholars wanting to hide stuff from the popular level Muslims, and that once you don't have that anymore, once you have literacy and as he's pointing out, social media, You can't hide it anymore. It doesn't work.
We don't tell the ordinary public. If we had a culture of reading and writing as it was in the West, then this apostasy movement would have started a lot earlier in the Muslim world, but it didn't happen. And it still hasn't happened in the Muslim world. So, okay, the printing press didn't do anything to Islam, but social media is definitely doing it.
I would say it would be very bad if the printing press did to, or if the internet or social media did to Islam what the printing press did to Christianity. It wouldn't be good. It would be bad.
Yeah.
Because that would mean that it would spread Islam to places where it wasn't before, or that it would spread a closer understanding, and that it would also bring forth a revival of Islamic, attempts to bring Islam back to its origins and all of that, because that's actually what happened with the printing press. So in Christianity, and you don't want that with Islam.
Yeah, correct. And but what Harris is pointing out here is really a huge issue as far as what that sheikh is saying. That sheikh was saying that, hey, Islam has been here for 14 centuries. Lots of people have tried to destroy it. Lots of people have thought they were going to change it. It hasn't worked, and therefore, kings today can't do it either. It's not going to happen today. And Harris is pointing out, this is like no other time in the past 14 centuries. You are in a different period. What's the difference? For the entire 14 centuries of Islam, Muslim leaders were able to keep their people pretty well insulated from, one, hearing criticisms of Islam, and two, of hearing a serious presentation of alternatives to Islam. Because you could be a preacher of some different religion or viewpoint and start spreading it. If you were remotely successful, they're going to chop your head off. So they were able to do that for 14 centuries, and now all of a sudden they can't do it anymore. They can't stop it. They can't stop it. And so this guy's saying, but for 14 centuries, yeah, things have changed. You are no longer in those 14 centuries. You're in right now, and this is a completely different world. And Islam seems to be crumbling from within pretty darn rapidly. So you probably this confidence you have, well, it's Islam's lasted 14 centuries, therefore it's not going to change. Pretty dumb.
Terrible.
And think about this. What happens in a place like Saudi Arabia when apostasy when it becomes okay, when they realize we can't just keep covering up all of these apostates. We need to make it legal to be an ex-Muslim. We need to make it legal to be an atheist now and all these other things, and to criticize Islam. Gosh, Islam would just implode almost instantly if the laws were changed to allow all the ex-Muslims to come out. Because keep in mind, if you're talking about 5 to 9 or 5 to 10% of the population of Saudi Arabia actually being ex-Muslim atheists, but they're not allowed to speak, what happens if all of a sudden they're allowed to speak? A percentage of that 5 to 10% of atheists are actually going to become pretty vocal in criticizing what they've had to keep their mouths shut about for a long time. So
they're very fond of absorbing content. That's where we come in. The ex-Muslim movement started roughly around 2007 and 2008. And look at this. Look at us. Just 15 years later, there is a wave of people leaving Islam, and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, he's right on the money. He's right on the money with some of this stuff, but that is huge. And it's you guys get blasted for what? Why are you still talking about Islam and call yourselves ex-Muslim, huh? Why are you doing that? And so there's this complaint that you guys actually have a community of ex-Muslims, but
they hate it.
He's right. And people who are kind of growing up now in this environment, they don't know what it was like. You go back to just 2005, so not even 20 years ago, 2005, 2006, 2000. It was rare to hear from an ex-Muslim. You'd hear that there is an ex-Muslim over here, or that an ex-Muslim is coming to speak. And you were just like surrounded at all times, whenever you went anywhere, by ex-Muslim. Now you are. It's just like they're everywhere. Anytime you go online, there are ex-Muslims everywhere. And this is part of the reason that the Dawah clowns are panicking. And like everything else, they think they can they think they can do away with it by tossing some insults at you. I remembered one of the first articles I wrote about Islam a long time ago. You're talking like, I don't know, had to be 2004, 2005 or something like that, was titled Islam Beheaded, the Information Superhighway and the Collapse of Islam. And it was how just what we were talking about, that Islam has kept people insulated for centuries, and now it's no longer insulated. And this is going to bring about the collapse of Islam. And here we are, less than 20 years later, seeing it. We should do a show. We should do a show where we go back and read that article and see how accurate it was. Because I haven't read it. I haven't read it since I wrote it years ago. But we should go back and read that article and see how correct it is and how much of a real prophet I am.
Just yesterday, we heard that MBS has legalized alcohol sales in the capital Riyadh. This is massive. The Quran specifically bans alcohol. And now we're going to have alcohol legally sold and consumed in the land of the Prophet himself. And this is not the only thing that MBS has done in recent years. Ever since he practically became the ruler of Saudi Arabia, he's taken multiple steps in modernizing Saudi Arabia. Because he understands one thing, that you can either be a modern, progressive society in the 21st century, or you can be an Islamic society. I mean, these guys are still debating whether they should marry little girls or not. They're debating whether 50% of your population should go to schools or not. They're debating whether you should flog and stone adulterers to death or not. I mean, Islam leads you to medieval barbarity. And if you want to thrive and prosper in the 21st century, you have to let go of these medieval barbaric principles.
The change that is happening culturally in Saudi Arabia is something that I would expect to happen in Iran if the regime was taken down and replaced with something democratic and secular, as the people actually wanted. But in Saudi Arabia, it is somehow just happening without any regime change. And I would say that a lot of the population in Saudi Arabia probably doesn't even approve of what MBS is doing culture-wise. Like, even, for example, the whole and that is the bad side of this. That is the pessimistic side of this. Even when it comes to the Israel normalization issue, for example, I think there was a survey recently where Saudi Arabians were asked how they feel about normalizing relations with Israel, and the vast majority was against it. I think it was like more than 90% were against it. But the king, the crown prince, doesn't care.
The funny thing is that MBS has actually faced a lot of opposition from Wahhabis, from these hardcore religious nutbags. But the guy, he's no softie, he's no Democrat. He rules with iron fist. And the good thing is, he's a young man. He's only 40 years old. So he's going to be around for a long time. Albeit he doesn't get assassinated, which I don't think he would, because he doesn't trust anyone.
There is this little side issue here. No, you could look at what we're saying right now and point out, say, wait, guys, if this guy is a closet ex-Muslim, if he's actually a closet atheist, you shouldn't be pointing it out, because you could actually be endangering his life. And so Harris is kind of responding to that, pointing out, hey, he's actually pretty hardcore and can get away with it because he's a tough guy, and he'll be brutal if you cross him. I would add, it's actually safe. It makes him safer coming from us. When it's coming from Muslim sheikhs accusing him of being an ex-Muslim atheist, that's one thing. If it's coming from the world's biggest Islamophobes, if the criticism is coming from the world's biggest Islamophobes, that's something that Muslims would not take seriously. Oh, that's what that's what these bigots say. In fact, if we all start saying it and we're constantly accusing him of being a closet ex-Muslim and so on, that could help him. Because then when a sheikh says it, he's actually an atheist, and people say, oh, you're saying what the Apostate Prophet and Harris Sultan say. We can't take you seriously. So I think this dude's actually safer if it's coming from critics of Islam, because they have a negative reaction to everything we say. So
can't be a softie and then fight against radical Islam. You can't do that. So you actually need to be a tough man.
Well, you could be.
You need
You
to
just
be a
lose.
strong man, and you need to be somewhat brutal and barbaric yourself. Yes, I know what he did in Yemen. I know what he did to Jamal Khashoggi. So, I'm not going all chummy with him. But it's just ironic that the birthplace of Islam is actually being ruled by an ex-Muslim atheist, like one of us. Yes, he's just a little bit harsher than us, but he's an ex-Muslim atheist. So, what are you going to do, my dear Muslims? So, Ali Dawa, what did you say? That people like us should be killed and you'll be watching.
This is a part of our religion. There's a reason to it.
There's our buddy.
Yeah? There's a reason why there's a capital punishment. Because
credit, Ali Dawa.
people like you, little weaklings, who leave their religion and cause corruption in the land by spreading it, the capital punishment in Islamic law would be applied to you. We have no doubt. And we're proud of that. Yeah? Capital punish will be applied in an Islamic state. And we,
capital punish will be applied.
We'll be watching. We'll be watching. So now you've got Saudi Arabia, which in theory should be an Islamic state, and instead they're helping us destroy it. Wow. Good times.
Well, guess what? Now your prophet's birthplace is being ruled by one of our guys, and we are watching. So I hope you like to...
He flipped it. He says he's watching as Saudi Arabia gets turned into a liberal utopia.
I mean, it's very hard to tell what is actually happening in the guy's mind, right? It's hard to actually conclusively say that the guy is an ex-Muslim, that he doesn't believe in Islam, that he's an atheist or whatever it is. But one thing is clear, that his actions are very, very contrary to what you normally expect from an Islamist conservative guy in charge of Saudi Arabia. They're very much contrary to that. They are. He looks toward progress, toward modernization, westernization, going completely against the idea that Saudi Arabia and the Arab world or the Muslim world is this hub for people who want to stay free from all the corruption in the West and all that stuff. That said, I would say there is still the fact that there is a very simple, logical explanation to why Saudi Arabia would want to westernize. It's because of despair, because they realized that before oil they were nothing, and once the dependency on oil runs out, they will return to very much nothing, because they have nothing else to offer. Their population doesn't work. Their population is not very efficient, which is very, very, very usual in Arab countries, which is why it would be a good idea for them to branch out and to possibly, open the country up to tourism and make it more welcoming to others, because they realize that if you don't do that, then the future of this country is doomed. But that said, even that realization, even with that realization, it would require somebody who doesn't care at all about Islam to make the steps that MBS is making right now. In the end, we don't know. In the end, it's very hard to know. But I don't know. Make of it whatever you think.
The internet is doing to... Here's Giovanni here, troublemaker. The internet is doing to Islam what the printing press did to Christianity, but in reverse. Destroying Islam. That's
pretty good.
That's the AP version there.
That's true.
Survite meat, gravestone. Gravestone, Christianity, 1436. Couldn't handle the printing press. In the arms of the angel. Unrelated, but why is apostasy rate is most now?
Yeah.
Not sure. Do you mean is it growing? Yeah. We've kind of been discussing that. They had people insulated from hearing criticisms, and now people can find out the problems with Islam, and they can see them around the world, and the apostasy rate is skyrocketing.
It's because the internet is doing the opposite of what the printing press did to Christianity.
You see, we have this the proof. What are you laughing at?
Man, just at that argument, that phrase.
Will Europe fall to Islam, AP?
No.
No. Yeah, I don't think Europe will fall to Islam either. The longer Europe waits to actually confront Islam, I think the worse it's going to be.
That's true.
Like, I believe you're still at a stage where you can deal with most of the issues very peacefully and so on. As Islam grows and gets more radical, a more brutal response is going to be required, which is so weird because we try to deal with it through speech and through arguments and through exposing things and so on. And everyone calls us bigots and, oh, you're so evil and you're Islamophobes. When we're the ones who try to deal with stuff peacefully. If you don't deal with it peacefully, then eventually you have to deal with it not peacefully. And I'd like to not have to do that.
That's true. The thing is, Western people can be very naive when it comes to dealing with
and stupid.
Stupid when it comes to dealing with other populations.
Stupid is as stupid does.
However, the Islamists are more and more showing their true faces and making clear to everyone what their intentions and what their beliefs actually are. Lots of people are seeing it, and I truly believe in one thing, and I say this without trying to be insulting, believing that I'm merely stating a fact. That
Here we go.
That European people are intelligent. European people are smart. They built something. They're still at the forefront of building things, providing wonderful places where those people want to go to live, because their own places are full of crap and hellholes and nothing is being done. And I don't know how I can say this without making it sound completely terrible, but there is I would say that Europeans are not stupid enough to be pushed over and defeated by a group that does not necessarily share the same quality of being very intelligent.
Tying that together with what I was saying, if politicians and journalists and educators and entertainers just stop defending Islam from criticism, even if they didn't want to actually help expose it, if they just shut up and stop defending it, I believe Islam collapses just from information. If people actually did their job, like if there were a terrorist attack and journalists actually did their job and exposed the causes of that, or if they did imagine opening the newspaper and saying, and reading about how all of the most popular da'is all defend child marriage and so on, and they started exposing it like that. I think it would happen. It would be very quick and would be very easy to expose and undermine Islam. If they keep defending it, I think you eventually get to a point where Europeans just rise up against their leaders and against the journalists, against their politicians if they have to. You get to a point where you realize I can't sit back and do nothing anymore because I have to think about the future of my children and stuff. And it's just not worth sitting back and doing nothing anymore. And so I don't care what happens. I'm going to stand against this. But I think, the longer people wait to deal with the problem, the worse the problem, the worse the solution's going to have to be. Not sure if you've ever addressed this, but does the theory that Islam started as a Christian heresy make sense to you guys? I still think you can view Islam as a Christian heresy in the sense that Islam is interacting with some Christians early on and absorbs some heretical views. But notice that. A heresy is you've got some of the substance there, but you lack the core Christian doctrines. And so Islam agrees with Christians that God exists, that God sent prophets, believes in the biblical prophets, believes in John the Baptist, believes that Jesus is born of a virgin, Jesus performs miracles, Jesus is the Messiah, Jesus is going to come back, believes all these things, and then rejects the core teachings of the gospel. So Jesus' death, his resurrection, his divine nature. And so that kind of fits the definition of a heresy pretty well. So I think you can view it that way. Let's close out with a song.
Ain't gonna follow no child molester, sex offender, private pretender. Ain't gonna follow no child molester.
Islam's not for me. Islam's not for me.
Islam's not
Catch y'all next time.